Hello, I'm Eli Machin, your host at Show Up 365. Welcome to my course on building unshakable trust. I'm looking forward to the next 6 weeks with you. We're going to look at some amazing things. It's going to set you free. Now, for those of you who don't know me, let me introduce myself to you. I began counseling in 1976. I've specialized in sexual addiction beginning in 1989. I've worked during those 27 years with over 7,500 sex addicts and their spouses, involving over 14,000 hours. I've been a trainer and speaker nationally and internationally for that period of time. And of all the things that I've accomplished, probably one of the most important things and that I bring to this deal, this course, is I'm a recovering co-addict. I've made the journey. I'm teaching things that I've learned and taught hundreds of others. I'm excited about this coming up. Now, what I've observed in these 27 years is that approximately 80% of addicts do not initiate recovery on their own. Usually it's because of intervention, a crisis. They're like bugs looking for a windshield, and when they finally find it, somebody gets them in. There's an intervention or boundaries set. Less than 60%, however, of spouses ever get into recovery. Now, 99% of spouses that do not trust the addict for 5 or more years. 65% of spouses never end up trusting the addict at all. And out of 100% of the spouses that did learn to trust the addict, learned first to trust themselves. This is the power of what we bring into this workshop. Now, most spouses feel like they're isolated in the relationship when they find out they're with an addict. They feel like they can't trust, they can't let down their barriers of protection. And they use this big honking shield of perfection and demand perfection first before they come out from behind the shield, before they're willing to engage in what I call the short place. What this does is the addict then has to walk a high wire of recovery to try to deal with and never slip, never make mistakes, whatever else, that in hopes that the spouse will come out from behind this shield. It doesn't usually work well, and what happens is spouses end up feeling like they're constantly in a trap. They don't know what's going on, and this trap keeps them full of fear, inner turmoil, stress, loneliness. Usually in the relationship, how this plays out is they look like a dog chasing their tail. They're constantly investigating. They're constantly obsessing over behavior. They're constantly wanting to know what's going on, and they're never free. Basically, they look like they come into counseling and they're looking for a judge to rule who's right and who's wrong and help them determine things that they got their own discernment they can't do. Or they come into a counselor and they're struggling through conflicts. They're wanting the counselor to be some kind of referee. And so they're struggling in this relationship of blaming each other and criticism of every little thing that's done and not done right. They're hiding or lying or deceiving or not disclosing. And then they're shaming one another. And shame will only exacerbate the problem. We're going to stop that. This is where it's going to end. I'm going to teach you a better way to live life than this. Now, what we're going to do in this course, some of our objectives will be this. We're going to build confidence in knowing, and that's a scientific term that I'll explain later, of what you know. You will gain trust in yourself in any kind of circumstance, in any situation. You're going to know trustworthiness when you see it. You're not going to have to ask. You're not going to have to beg or grovel. You're going to know. You're going to know it deep in here. Now, mastering these concepts will lead you to a life of unshakable trust. This is where I want us to go. Now, let me cover the following 6 modules that we'll go the next 6 weeks in a brief overview. We're going to start with building that bedrock of trust with safety within yourself. Then that unshakable self-trust. From that, we're going to deal with some issues that I know every spouse that I've ever worked with struggle with, including myself, around safety with God. And then God trust. You got to feel safe with him before you ever trust him. And so how are you going to surrender to him? How are you going to walk recovery if you don't go there and do this? Then from that, you learn safety with other. And from that safety, you build relational trust, whether it's with your spouse, whether it's with a community, friends, or workplace, colleagues. Now, we start at the beginning, bedrock through. When we get to the end, you're going to walk through. You're going to learn as you master these concepts. You walk through. You're not going to be afraid anymore. You're going to know. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my story. I grew up frightened of school. I had a learning disability. I was dyslexic, and I was ADD. Now, that's a bad combination for school. And I had a really mean teacher my first year, and it scared me to death. Now, no one ever told me, but that whole experience of why I couldn't do it and it seemed to me other children were doing it, is that the message I got was, in my own head, I'm stupid. That was the only way I could really come up with a good answer. And then from that experience of school and I'm stupid, then report card came along. It was a frightening experience. I can remember over and over how afraid I was around bringing my report card home because I had to give that to my dad and mom. That experience left me with, I'm not enough and I don't measure up. Now, they never told me I wasn't that. They never said those things to me. That's the way I interpreted my failure to meet their expectations. Now, what resulted from that is Dad vigorously trying to encourage me to raise my grades. And his strategy was to properly stimulate the posterior end of my anatomy so I'd get smart. Now, it didn't really work, and the message I ended up with is that I'm not supposed to feel, because he told me not to cry when he spanked me. Now, by the 6th grade, I got there. I learned not to feel. He quit spanking me then. I wish I'd learned it earlier, I guess. Now, that on top of that is that we moved every 18 months to 2 years because of Dad's work. He was a management person in textiles, and we were moving from one small town to the next everywhere we went. Every 18 months to 2 years. I never established friendships, long terms, and I was always the new kid on the block, the outsider. Now, no one ever told me this message that I wasn't likable. It was just, I was never sure I was. So the message inside my head, the story I go to sometimes, I'm not likable. Now, this all left me in quite a mess. And you can imagine what that set me up for relationships. That I'm not supposed to feel, I'm not enough and I don't measure up, I'm stupid, and I'm not likable. Oh boy, what a setup for relationships. And so coming into a relationship is a challenging thing. It took a lot of recovery. But one of the things that we began to do is that as I worked recovery, I ran into someone that I met. And I liked this person. I really enjoyed this person. And one of the things that I noticed about this person is this person, she had done her recovery. And she wanted a relationship where two people would show up. And she was willing to do the work. And so we began building trust with each other. We encourage one another to earn it. We've been in relationships in life in different circumstances where those relationships weren't trustworthy. So we both engaged in a relationship where we earned trust with one another. And we found ourselves at the show-up place. It's boundaried. It's 50-50. I can't fix her on her side. She can't fix me on mine. But we did our work. We built a vision of this is what we want in a relationship, of safety, transparency, that we could, I use a term, and I don't mean to be crude with this, that we're buck naked at the show-up place, that there's nothing hiding. And as we created more and more safety, that transparency became easier and easier. Until I believe today, we really totally trust one another. Not to be perfect. We don't trust one another to get it right every time. Certainly my wife doesn't trust me to nail it every time. I hit the board a lot. But she trusts me to be me. And that, for her, gives her confidence that she's safe. Now, that's what we're going to teach. That's what we're going to go through in our first module coming up next. Looking forward to it.